Is it possible to heal from trauma or stress that you've had as a result of some kind of communication breakdown or a relationship breakup that you've had? In other words, do you really need to go and address the person directly to deal with what's going on inside of you that may have been associated with the cause of this breakup or this communication breakdown or whatever it is that happened between you and this other person? There are some people that would say that the thing to do would be to go and talk to the person and forgive that person for whatever it was that you think they did to be a problem or offend you, and to have an honest communication with that person. There's other fields of thought where, well, even if the person is not around anymore, maybe they are outside of your reach from a communication standpoint. For example, they're dead or in some other way you're unable to get a hold of them. You could go ahead and go through a healing process without that person actually being in your life. And so that's what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, is how do you do that? How do you heal when there's something that happened, whether you feel like it was your fault or something that you did that caused the breakdown in that relationship, or that caused the trauma between you and that person that you have just not been able to get over, or whether it was the other person's fault from your perspective and it's causing you anxiety or angst, or it just something that you can't get over. So the main way that I've looked at dealing with these things is I've gone with the practice of trying to let those emotions go. Because with any one of those instances where there's this barrier between myself and another person, it is ultimately the result of feelings that I have that were caused by a trigger that occurred with that other person. And then I go into those feelings and ask myself if I can let them go. There's also the tapping method that can be effective with that, where you go through the karate chop point and then tap through the meridians on the face and the body, and then work through those feelings, those emotions. Now, that you may think that by doing that, well, I'm only addressing one side of the problem, I'm only addressing me, I'm not addressing that other person and whatever they did to offend me. I'm not fixing them, I'm not helping them, I'm not forgiving them, for example, because I'm not going and interacting with them and making it known that I'm doing these things. But I maintain that you can actually do the healing on your side, and what will happen is once you've done that healing, your heart and mind are clear in a way that you will either be inspired to reach out to that other person to make amends or to do what needs to be done for the healing process to complete itself, or because of that healing happening in you, it will draw that other person to you, because there's a connection that you can't see, that's unconscious, that's universal between all humans. And I've seen this happen where people have just been drawn to me, and there's like this serendipity that happens. And a lot of times that is because of what's going on within me. It has nothing to do with necessarily me interacting with somebody else in order to cause things to happen. by healing myself, the universe brings things to me. And that's been my experience. Kind of goes along with something interesting that I read recently about Nikola Tesla and him talking about the brain being a receiver. So most of us have been brought up to believe, especially in Western culture, that our mind is basically the thoughts that we have, and the mental activity is all something that's created within us, that we're the ones thinking the thoughts, we're the ones coming up with the imaginations. But when you dream, a lot of that stuff is just unconscious mishmash that happens. And in some cases, you may come up with imaginations in your sleeping, while you're sleeping, the dreams that you have, that although they may have representations of people that you have felt were in your life, you'll notice that there may be things in those dreams that you're unfamiliar with or that you've never seen before, or never experienced before, had feelings that were so beyond what you've ever actually experienced in real life, it's unfamiliar to you. And I would suggest that that's because of this idea that our brains are actually receivers, and not necessarily because we're manufacturing these thoughts within ourselves, okay? So that means that we can heal, and if our brains are receivers, they can also be transmitters. That means that things are going out and coming in, so that we're seeing and hearing and feeling based on the imaginations that are being transmitted to us, and then also that we're transmitting to other people. That also means that you can heal yourself, and the healing can actually then be transmitted to another person through a means that is not direct communication, where you are physically in that person's presence. Anyway, so I mentioned two methods of healing, but there's another method that I wanted to bring up, and that is actually going into your imagination and imagining you counseling and giving love to your younger self. This works great when you identify an area in your life where you have felt hurt from childhood especially. And in fact, if you've had a hurt more recently, what I would do if I were you is look at how you feel, and then see if you can bring that feeling back to the earliest time in your life where you ever felt it. And I've actually done this purposefully, where I've had a feeling, and then I would ask myself, when is the very first time I ever felt this? And you're basically by doing this, basically what I was doing is causing myself to regress to an earlier time in my life, usually at a very early childhood time, when I first experienced this emotion. And what's interesting is there are some emotions that once you identify them and you feel them, you can recognize that this isn't the first time I've felt this. I've felt this before. And then you go back to that time, you go, you know what, I felt it before that. And I felt it before and before and before, and I felt it not just in this specific type of situation, but I felt it in this other situation. And then you realize that certain feelings come up around a variety of different situations, but there could have been there actually was a very first time when you felt it, which is likely the pattern that developed that ends up being used for triggering events based on other patterns in your life later on in your life. So you can go into that and go back to the earliest time you ever felt that. And you may not even be able to see a visual image of it, but you feel, well, this is what I've done. I felt the memory without seeing the memory. And in feeling the memory, I knew that I was a very small child at the time that I felt that. And then I went into the feeling, and I also went and embraced my younger self and said, you know what, little guy, I know that this hurts. I know you feel hurt. You feel lost. You feel lonely. You feel upset. Whatever the feelings are, right? It could be a conglomeration of feelings. Whatever they are, you express it to your younger self, and you counsel that younger self with what you think that younger you wants to hear, wants to feel from you. And typically what it is, with any very small child, that child just wants to be picked up and held and be told that it's all okay. Everything is fine. You're okay. I love you. And you're okay. It's okay to hurt right now, but everything is okay. It's just a feeling. And it'll go away soon, and you'll be fine. And by doing that, by comforting that younger you, and helping that younger you feel okay in that situation, whatever it was that brought up the feeling originally, that younger you maps the incident to feelings of comfort and feelings of security that it didn't have previously. And in doing that, it heals the younger you, which then makes the rest of the incidences in your life fall like dominoes, so that you actually no longer have the attachment to those feelings and can go forward in life not being bogged down by them. Anyway, this is just another way to practice in the healing process when you run across uncomfortable feelings in your life.